Hi, Marilyn here, and I'm back with Saturday Sampler, Plum Fusion Block 1, and we're ready to piece the block together. So if you want to look at what the block looks like, this is it right here. And then next month I'll have the whole quilt and you'll be able to see it in the quilt. But this is block 1 right here, and that's what we're making today. And so the first thing that we do is we go through, so here we have our cutting here. And now we're right here and we're making half square triangles. We're going to make 2 different sizes. So the first one is half square triangle A. We're going to use the 2 3 1/4 inch squares of fabrics 3 and 8. This is what they'll look like when they're finished. So the first thing that we're going to do is put, you know, what we would normally do would be right sides together, but when you have batiks, there's really no right or wrong size, just whatever ones you want to sandwich together. But the first thing that I did is I drew my lines for sewing in between on the lighter fabric. Okay, so that would have been fabric 3. And this is where that Quilter's Magic Wand came into play. So before I sandwiched them, I put my wand, so there's a little line right in the middle. You may or may not be able to see it, but it's right down the middle here, and that's the line that goes right on the point, from point to point. And then I have my mechanical pencil here, and I draw a line on each side here. Okay, and that line that I'm drawing, so that line in the middle, point to point, here just marks here where I have my non-sewing line. That's my cutting line that you don't have to mark. And the drawing line is the line that I'm going to sew on, and that's 1/4 inch off of each side. Okay, so I've drawn that line, and then I typically sew a little bit inside of that line, and that just makes my half square triangle just a little bit bigger, so you can sew inside of that. So I've sewn in on each side. Okay, and I've done that for both squares, and it's going to yield 4 half square triangles. And then what you'll do is just take your ruler and then put it on point to point, and then just cut down the middle. Okay, I'm not going to cut this yet because I'm going to be using that as a sample in class, but once you cut it, that will then open, and there's your half square triangle, and then you're going to press it to the dark. And that's what I've done here is I've cut these 2, and I've pressed them to the dark. That's, you know, the other half of these squares, okay? And then they're still too big. You need to cut them down to 2.5 inches. They're oversized. So you can either do that with a small square up ruler, or you can do that with your block lock. So if you don't have a block lock, take a square ruler and you can just cut it down to 2.5 inches evenly, okay? Or you, with my block lock ruler, how it works is this little groove in the middle will go right into the seam, okay? So how do you do that? Well, the emblem goes into the valley. So when you've pressed it to the dark, that makes the hill, and the valley is where the seam allowance isn't. Okay, or the lock, the low, goes on the low side, and this side goes on the high side. So I'm going to push that right, that little lock is going to lock right in, and it's 2.5 inches. So here's my 2.5, go somewhere in, and then the 2.5. And I'm going to make my first cut here. Yeah. Okay. And then essentially, if you were you could just twirl this whole thing and slide it down to 2.5, but that's a lot to do if I'm doing a lot. I'm going to be doing 4 of them. So what I do, just to be consistent, is I do this side. I do them all at once. I just slide this in, and I cut my other one. And I would continue to do my other 2, all the same. And then I stack them all up. I turn this way, and I turn my ruler. So now my emblem or my lock or my low side is on the low side again. So I'm always staying consistent. And then I lock this in, and now it's perfectly at the 2.5. Here's my 2.5 inch here and my 2.5 inch here. Hold it down, and then I'm going to square it up. Okay. And then I just take this on the next one, just lock it into the seam. Oh, it's wonderful. So why in the world would I take all this time to do that? Well, look at this. I have a perfectly square half square triangle. If I was doing this to size, a lot of times after you press them, they get all wonky. Technical term, okay? Perfect. And when I piece this in, I have a perfect point on each side. Really nice. And so I would have 4 of them. And where this goes is in the center of my block right here. So I can't really show you exactly, but this is my pinwheel for the middle of my block. So I have one side going here, and then the next one going down, and then so on with the other 2 to make the pinwheel for the center. So that's the center of my block. Okay, moving on for the other one, half square triangle B, you're going to use your 2 6-inch squares, fabric 1 and 10. Okay, so a larger piece. I've marked my larger one with my magic wand, point to point, drew a line, cut it in half down the middle.
Well, first you sewed it.
Sewed it, cut it, opened it up. After I cut it, there's one of them. I press to the dark. The other one, I press to the dark. Okay, so now, once I did that, I'm going to actually do that for you. Okay. All right, so I would press this to the dark. Okay, I'm going to just finger press this for you right now, just to show you what's going to happen here. So the next thing you do, I don't know if let me see if my iron's still hot. Okay, I'm going to press this to the dark. Excuse my back. Now the next thing that you're going to do here to make your hourglass is you're going to take your ruler, you're going to put it point to point.
Do you square it first?
No, you don't square it up. Okay? Do not square it up. You're going to just keep it how it ends up. Don't worry about it. Okay? We're going to square it up later. It's going to turn out big. You're just going to cut it. Okay? Put that aside, and you're going to have another one. Trust me, it's going to work out. We just press this. Okay, and I'm going to take the other one that's not squared up and put my ruler here and cut it in half. Okay, so now because they were opposing sides, this one is going to match to that one. Ooh, look at that. And that one's going to match to that one, and you're going to sew them together. Oh, look, we have hourglasses. See how that works? So we're going to sew those together, which I've done that already. And that's the resulting piece. Now you're going to press that out. And now we're going to have to cut them down. Now you can use, and they have to be cut to 4.5 inches. So you can use a square up. And what's half of 4.5?
2 1/4.
2 1/4. So you can't just take a square up and at 4.5 on the edge, take 4.5 and cut it down. What's going to happen? It's going to come out lopsided. So you have to take the middle of a square at 2 1/4 and square it up, and then flip it and take the other 2 1/4 and square it up. Or you can have a Tucker trimmer. This is my Tucker trimmer. Amazing ruler by Studio 180 or Deb Tucker. And this one has whole numbers on one side and half numbers on the other. So we're going to take the half numbers because we need it at 4.5, and we're going to lay it down. So you can see our half numbers, and I'm going to find the 4.5 and the 4.5. Oh, and look at this. It has this beautiful little square in the middle. Oh, so I don't even have to do any figuring. It's figured it out for itself right here. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to think, but I just have to find 4.5. It's marked the diagonal. There's my 4.5. And I just have to square it up on this side and this side. Isn't that lovely? Yes. And turn it. And then I have to go down and find the 4.5 and the 4.5 and just match up the diagonal again. Right there. Make sure it's not moving on me. And then square it up here and here. Oh, isn't that nice? And I have a perfect hourglass. So you need to do that with all four. You need 4 hourglass. Where do they go? Here. 1, 2, 3, 4. If we look at the picture, right here. See, there they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, right on the outside of the picture. Okay, so there you go. That's those. We got those out of the way. Okay, now, so we have our pinwheel in the middle. We have our half square triangles. We have our first hourglass, and now we need our last one. Okay, so let's get those out of the way. So we're going to take our triangles that we've cut, and we need to sew them together. So you need fabrics 2 and 3, okay, and watch where they're placed. All right, so it looks like this. So fabric 3 is on that side and fabric 2 is here. Make sure they're placed correctly. Or you can take an artistic freedom and place them the opposite way. I don't care. Do whatever you want. It's your quilt. But maybe you should place them that way. All right. So you're going to sew all those like that. Press to fabric 3. Okay. Now you're going to take the only fabric you have left, this big triangle, okay, which is fabric 9. And you're going to sew these on. Now what you're going to notice is that it's a little bit too big, slightly. So you just kind of center it and sew these all on, just like I did. So you're going to place this here and sew this on here. So you're going to line it up on the bottom, okay? And sew all this together, and then you're going to press this out. So I've sewn this on, okay? And then these two I've pressed out. And you have to now square this up to 4.5, okay? Again, this ruler works for hourglass and half hourglass. So again, I'm going to line this up. I'm going to find my grid that has my 1/2 inch increments, and I'm going to lay this down on my 4.5. Oh, look, there's a line up the middle and my 4.5 this way. So I have a 4.5 diagonal, and then I have a line right up the middle. That's all I had to find. Isn't that lovely? I love it. Okay, I'm going to square it up here. Now, what if you don't have the Tucker trimmer? Well, go buy one. Okay. And then if you don't have it, you have to use a square up and mark it at 2 1/4 in the middle. Okay? And then turn it. Okay. And then mark it at 4.5. And then you have the diagonal here and the diagonal up this way. And then cut here and cut here. And then you need 4 of those. Okay, and where do those go? Oh, look, they're right here. So they're facing out on this block out here. So I can't lay out the full block for you since I have it obviously in pieces to show you the increments in piecing. But you kind of get the idea that these are laid out here that are hourglass lays in the middle on each side. Another one goes here, okay, and that are little pinwheel goes in the middle, and then we have another hourglass on here, and then these go on the other side, and then you can see the actual block right here and how that sets. Okay, so once you get these laid out here, it becomes a 9 patch. This is the layout. So I would piece this to this to this. I would press out. This to this to this. I'd press in, and then I'd press out. Okay, and then you'll piece those 3 rows together, and then get those 3 rows. And it doesn't matter which way you're pressing these rows. Okay. After I'm done, I do spray everything with spray starch, even though it's a batik, to get it laying flat. We have in the store either Best Press or Flatter. What's the difference? This one is a little bit stronger than this. What do I prefer? I like Flatter. For me, it works a little bit stronger, but I do put it in this this spray bottle because it sprays, it disperses a little bit more. I don't know, you can't probably see it, but it disperses a little bit more than the nozzle itself. So I kind of like how it sprays out over the block. But I do spray all my blocks. I flip it over on the back and make sure all the seams are laying flat, and I press it on the back, and then I flip it to the front and spray it and make sure that it's laying completely flat and looks really nice. So, and then that's when I check to make sure that it's 12.5 inches. If it's bigger, do I cut it down? I'm really careful about that because I don't want to cut off any points. So if you're really unsure what to do, talk to me first before you start cutting or worrying about how it's turning out, so that we can look at what's happening before you move forward with, don't panic. Okay, so anyways, thank you for joining me for the first month. I look forward to spending the year with you, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.